everybody, and welcome to another comic episode of Games My Mom Found. I am Mike Albertin, and who are the Vigilantes with me tonight?
Masked Vigilante Stefan JD.
And Jesse Chavez.
Returning back to Games My Mom Found. Nice to have you back on again.
Oh, good to be here.
Hasn't been, episode 11 you joined us back, and we were still baby podcasters learning how to podcast.
Ooh.
I mean, we're like 40 some episodes at this point, or close to over 40 at this point. So,
all right, you guys have leveled up. Good to see.
We're getting there. Working towards
still whine a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
Stefan, since this was your pick for this episode, do you want to introduce what we're going to be talking about this week, or this episode?
Yes, we are talking about the comic book Kill or Be Killed, and it's done by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips and colored by Elizabeth Budweiser, I don't know.
And before we go too far, there will be spoilers for this comic that came out in 2016, 28, and in 2018. No, it didn't end that long ago. But also, this, just to give a quick warning, this episode will probably touch on mental illness, a lot of different explicit things we're probably going to talk about: cheating, rape, killing people, suicide. So just to warn you before we get into this episode, I just want to give a quick warning out there. So
it gets
something
deep.
that you're not. Well, I mean, I don't know where this conversation is going to go because it hasn't happened yet, but I don't want to go back and add audio in, so I want to get it out just in case. So anyone listening to this, I also would probably recommend headphones for this one because depending on what we say about this comic, or if we go into it, you might not want that out loud. But I don't know where we're going. So there's your spoiler warning. There's your warning about explicit content if we get there. And all right, Stefan, you said you wanted to start this off with a little bit intro to the comic.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, for people who haven't read the comic, they won't be able to get the inner monologue, which is a key component of the comic for our main protagonist. Well, main vigilante Dylan. So I just wanted to read the first couple of pages of just his inner monologue to kind of show where his mind is at in the world. And the first thing he says here is, this isn't how I imagined my life would be, ever. But you don't always have a choice, do you? And let's face it, I've become pretty good at this. Killing people who deserve it. And yeah, you can sit there and ask, what gives me the right to make that judgment? But that's just your defense, your alibi for not doing anything. Because the world is shit right now, and we all know it. Just look at the news for 5 fucking minutes, and it's obvious. Big business controls your government. Assholes go on shooting rampages almost daily. Terrorists blow up airports and train stations. Cops kill innocent black kids and get away with it. Psychopaths run for president. Oh, and the Middle East is one nuke away from turning us all into dust. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. The fact is, there's no justice. Bad people get away with everything. And greed is destroying the entire fucking planet. We all know this is true, but we refuse to really let ourselves believe it. We cling to fantasy, to hope. We say shit like, the arc of time is long, but it bends towards justice, when it clearly so does not. It bends towards fascism and mass graves, but we sit at our screens and fill our heads with noise and scream at each other as if that's going to change anything. I get it. I used to be like that too, but now my life is different, obviously.
It's a fucked up comic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first thing I want to say. It's a fucked up story.
It's a fucked up we live in.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are things wrong with today's world. I will agree with that. But, I mean, this story really... I mean, yes, it does touch on that, but this guy's not the hero in any shape or form, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's...
claims to be either.
Yeah, he's just a vigilante who, for some reason, starts seeing a demon after he tries to commit suicide, and now, like, the demon tells him, if you don't kill...
Summarizing it very well.
Yeah. If you don't kill somebody for me every month, then I'm going to take your soul, because he miraculously survives suicide, which it's kind of funny how he does.
He jumps off a roof, gets tied up in, like, the cords or something, right?
Yeah, like the clotheslines from... Yeah.
Well, he didn't jump that high, so that didn't help the situation either.
To sum it up Think of this story as one part Death Note, one part Taxi Driver, and just a dash of Boondock Saints.
Yeah, a little bit of Fight Club too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes, we start seeing this demon that he doesn't believe is real, and then I think it's in the first or second issue. Pretty quickly, it shows you he's arguing with this demon, but no one else can see it, of course. And he ends up like breaking his arm or getting his arm hurt or something with his shoulder. It's been like 2 weeks since I read this, so my memory is not as good as it should be.
He lands in a snow patch.
Yeah, and that's when he starts believing that this demon is real. Then as Stefan was saying, tells him to kill, and that's his whole thing. Like he doesn't want to kill, but this demon's like, if you don't kill people, I'm gonna kill you because you owe me a life because I spared yours.
Yeah, so that hence kill or be killed.
That takes a whole nother meeting halfway through the series, but yes.
Yeah.
Well, first, I just want to say that this story was so. I mean, even just in the beginning, it's very depressing. Like you get into this character who lives with his roommate, who's dating his friend, who he's a crush on, and I think I forget what happened that sets him up to have him jump off the roof. Like, what did she say? I can't remember her wording. She said something. And that's what did her. Something happened because he cares for her.
Yeah, I think essentially what it was is they were.
Oh, pity. They pitied him. You could hear through the vent.
Yeah,
like, I feel sorry for him.
Yeah, they were like getting it on or whatever, and usually he'd have to listen to it. And then this time they're like, we feel pity for him, and he's like, but she felt sorry for me, and that's what did it. So I don't know. He had to kill himself.
Think about. I mean, I know a lot of people probably go through the situation having to live with someone else, listening to your roommate bang the girl that you like, or whoever the person is that you like, and like, I mean, even just then that would mess with someone's head.
Yeah,
I get this one messed up situation.
Just kind of, it also, and then that harkens back to being kind of like Fight Club, where he has to listen to Brad Pitt's character. What's his name? Tyler Durden, like have sex with Marla. Yeah.
She won't know. She won't know the difference between who this is. She won't know the difference, something like that. You're like, oh, because she's all on drugs. Sure she is. That's what it was. Yeah. We're not going to go to Fight Club though.
That's another episode.
Maybe. We kind of stick with, well, for comics, none of these are video game comics, but, you know. But one thing I do, yes.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. One thing I do want to say is that we hadn't mentioned is that, like, that first part that Stefan was reading takes place way later in the comic. Because it starts off with him, you've seen him killing people, and he's already got the mask on, he's already a killer, and then it reverts back, and it's him narrating the story for a good chunk of the story about what happened, and he's like, you're playing catch up.
Yeah, a majority of the comic is pretty much flashback, everything leading up to a certain moment, which is a very noir direction they go for. It's not just reflected in the art, just the entire story. It feels kind of like, yes, I suppose you're wondering how I ended up here. Well, you're about to find out. I'm going to talk about it. 17 issues.
Was it 17 issues before you got caught up?
Yeah. It's
we were supposed to record this like 2 weeks ago, but due to scheduling conflicts, it didn't happen. So I'm just like, I don't remember this book anymore. But that's like any comic. If you were reading this when it came out, I mean, hell, I would have forgotten each issue by the time the next issue came out, because some of these are like good over a month apart, it looks like.
Which is hilarious because he openly chastises people. It's like, he probably forgot what happened, but here, in case you did, just in case you did, here's what happened last time.
Isn't that's normal comic books, I feel like, though.
Last time on Kill or Be Killed, Goku decided he wanted to appease a demon. No.
You have to make DPC.
No, but it's kind of messed up how he finally decides to kill people, because it like the whole demon's there and he doesn't know if it's real or not, and he starts feeling ill and he's like, oh, it's because I'm dying, it's because of the demon, it's gonna kill me. And he remembers this terrible story about when he was younger, because he's trying to find somebody that's worth killing, like a bad person.
Warning, some explicit content I did not mention, so just
and his friend Teddy was they were like little kids and they're like playing around or whatever, and Teddy
8-year-old or 10-year-old?
Yeah, it's so bad. And Teddy turns to him and he's like, "Hey, Dylan, you want to take off your pants and we'll put our penises in each other's buttholes?" And he's like, "What? No." And he's like, "Well, me and my brother do it all the time." And he later realizes that Teddy was being molested by his bigger brother.
Yeah.
And Teddy's brother is the one who he's like, "You know what? I'm going to kill that guy."
Yeah, and it's just, it doesn't take long before this book just hits. I mean, it hits a lot of sensitive stuff to talk about, and it hits it hard, and in a very just fucked up way, let's say.
It's very fitting for the story, though, because in a way he discusses it in a very casual, roundabout way. But again, especially with that opening monologue setting everything up. It's pretty much like, "No, this is the status quo. I'm used to it. The only difference is like, yeah, but I'm going to actually do something about it in his own destructive, fucked up way."
Yeah,
exactly. Because we all, like he's saying, like we all get angry about what's going on, but we never like step up to do anything about it. And you're right, he does. He's like, "I'm going to kill this guy because he's a child molester."
It's like one of those things where, like, the guy deserves it. The guy deserves to get shot in the face. As you find out later, he's even worse than what you thought. But it's just one of those things where it never, even in this story, doesn't work out too well. Depending on where you're going from this, but
yeah,
it's like what gives you the right, which this thing does kind of touch on.
The detective he runs into later flat out asks him that question multiple times. Like, seriously, what makes you think you have a right to be, judge, jury, and executioner? And he doesn't really answer it initially. He has to keep asking it over and over again.
Like a famous idea that I always think of, this is another fictional character, but like with Batman. Like, Batman can never kill Joker. Even if he killed the Joker, he would stop it. He would end it. All the murders would be over, but then you're no better than the man you are trying to stop. The same idea. That's why.
Right.
That's how I always feel about this. That's how I feel about any type of, even in real life, when you have people that think like this. Which I don't think you have very many, but because real life don't work out so well for that.
Yeah, and it's weird too how like it pans out, because like the girl, the detective that kind of catches on to him, her name's Lily Sharp. Yeah, that's a good name, and she's a good character. And the Teddy's brother, who he eventually kills, leads to the Lily Sharp looking deeper into that case and into that guy, and they find out that he was part of a child sex ring. Yeah. So he's doing all these he's going out and killing these bad people, but it's leading to bigger things of cleaning up the world. And it starts to make him feel like, I am doing a right thing. Look what I did. Like I caught the assholes in a child sex ring.
Yeah. So. My one complaint, I think, well, one of the few complaints I'd have about this story is sometimes, especially, I mean, I guess it makes sense for a majority of the earlier victims, earlier targets to have it, but there's quite a few times in the story where it feels like, oh, I need to kill somebody. Let me crack open a can of Makes It Easy. Oh, they're a pedophile. Oh, they're running a sex.
Sorry, keep going. It's funny how you said it.
There's no moral quandary here. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's very black and white. But it does eventually hit that grayscale with, what was his dealer's name, Rex?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Getting caught in the crossfire, and it's like, he was a family man, and he didn't mean me any harm. It's kind of weird that it took as long as it did to get to that point, but it did get there eventually.
And that
right.
all comes about because he ends up being stupid, and he ends up killing some of the Russian mafia, and Russian mafia doesn't take too kindly to one of them being killed. So.
Oh, yeah. There's a very funny scene where he goes to a strip club because he knows it's run by the Russians, and he waits till after they close every night because they rally up the girls into a van, and they go to this, like, what's it called? Where they farm out sex to people and they're hookers at night.
And they go to an apartment building in this story. Mm-hmm. But a brothel would be one word you might be looking for.
Yeah, and he's learning how to be a vigilante because at first he's using his dad's gun, and he's realizing like, oh, this is not enough heat. So he goes and buys a shotgun, and he's ready to kill this huge Russian dude, and he shoots him, and then the hooker jumps out of the car and starts attacking him. And he's like, Jesus Christ, I didn't know hookers could fight this good.
Well, he opens the door to like free him, like you're free, and then they start kicking his ass instead.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny too.
Which
coming out.
It's very funny because I want to say a long time ago, my friend who was a lady, she worked out and she was in shape, and she went to a strip club called Jaguars, and she was like, they had this thing every Thursday night where you could box a stripper in a ring, and people would throw money in there, and you would get half of whatever they threw in there. And while I was watching the fight, people were throwing like $100 bills in there. I mean, it was a lot of money. But the sad part is that she was 2 feet taller than a stripper. She worked out, she had huge muscles, and the stripper still beat her ass every single round, like for 3 minutes. I can't imagine doing anything for 3 minutes, let alone having to fight a stripper.
Just hopped on the pole, swung around, and fucking kicked her right in the face. That was it.
This is not the story I was expecting.
I was like, I don't know if I should tell this story because I don't go to strip clubs, but I was brought to one once for this weird reason.
Yes, brought to it. Yes.
I was dragged.
I'm gonna stop asking questions, but all right. But it's just, but it does touch on a lot of subjects in this, and at first you might kind of feel for the character, but I didn't like him pretty quickly because I just don't like these type of characters. Talking this one, even in the beginning, I thought he was pretty fucked up.
Well, he makes no. It's not like he's wishy-washy about it. He's pretty open from the get-go. He's like, no, I'm really fucked up. There's something very wrong with me. I don't even know if this demon is real. It's kind of a compulsion, and every time. It's really nice to see at the story. Every time he starts to feel like he's invincible or untouchable, or like he's getting really good at this, he's like, yeah, but it's not going to last. It's luck. It's, I don't know. He just kind of has a sense. It's like he already knows it's going to just fall apart eventually.
Yeah.
He's just waiting to.
One thing interesting we hadn't mentioned also, like when the comics, or when it does a few of the flashbacks, it shows like he had a girlfriend before, like maybe 4 years or 5 years before the story started. Like his life was a little better. I think he had a better job too, and then life just started to kind of go to hell, which happens to some people. Like I know he's not doing good in school, I think it was, and he's living in a shitty apartment with an asshole.
Yeah, with asshole roommate, and then he's on medication that he's getting illegally from Rex, his drug dealer.
So he can't afford legit meds.
Yeah, no health insurance. He even points out too, he's like right in the middle of like a exchange of gunfight, and he says something like, I never said anything cool right before doing anything. The only people who do that are assholes. I'm so-and-so and I'm awesome, so watch out. Like anyone would ever say that in real life.
There might be idiots out there, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I feel like with this story, it's trying to be very self-conscious about all of the vigilante story tropes. It's just like, yes, I know I'm fitting into the cliche right now, but trust me, it's not gonna stay that way.
Yeah, I don't know.
One fucked up story off and over and over again to just keep weird shit just keeps happening, and I couldn't stop reading it. Like I really enjoyed this story a lot. It just, not as fucked up as it was. I couldn't stop. I just couldn't stop reading. I'm like, gotta read the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, people are fun to read about.
It's well written, and the art is good too. I'm not big on art.
God. Sean Phillips kills it in this book, people. Yeah. You tell him I said that if you ever see him.
Like one thing I do want to touch on is as the story progresses early on, and it gets even more screwed up with everything going on with his roommate's girlfriend, Kira, his also friend, is at one point I think his roommate goes away or something, and then she kisses him. And you already have him very screwed up in the head, very confused about what's going on, and all of a sudden he's like, what? And I think if I remember correctly, doesn't she ignore him the next time? Like it never happened. She's like, act like it never kissed or anything. She won't talk about it to him. Is that right? Okay, and if you think about that, to a person that's already suffering mental, I mean, he's talking to a demon, and he's already suffering all this. He's already killing people, but he's just mentally like the guy's having a hard time, and just seeing, and then you have this woman that he's, and cares about very much so, that he wants, is unattainable. All of a sudden, starts giving him attention in a way that doesn't make sense. I mean, it even messes up even more, which that works that way.
Right. And then he eventually does get better at it too, which is like the fucked up part, because he still has to kill somebody every month because he keeps seeing the demon. And it's kind of funny how the Russians start coming after him, because he finally attacks the like whorehouse. And
that's way later though.
Yeah, and he purposely leaves a note and a backpack on the top of the building. He's like, I got 3 steps to my plan, because he thinks if he takes out the main Russian mob guy, the boss, that they'll stop coming after him, which apparently Russians don't do that. They'll come after you forever.
But the reason why he does that is because I think he stopped killing for a little bit before this part, because we haven't said this yet, but I think what happens is he ends up going back. So after him and Kira are having their thing, he ends up running into his ex-girlfriend from like years ago that I barely mentioned a little bit earlier in this episode. And he starts dating her. Him and Kira, he ends it with Kira because he's tired of this back and forth. They start sleeping together, and she's still with her boyfriend, which again is screwed up in a lot of ways. And she's pretty much using both these guys and won't end it. He has sex with her, and then she goes in the bedroom with the other guy and has sex with him too. And he's listening to it, and it's like, I mean, that's just one messed up scenario. Let's just say that.
They go into detail about her, like once you understand her childhood and her growing up and her relationship with her mom, it makes sense, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean it does. Like her mother would change, with kind of like, they call her kind of like a chameleon, where in different relationships she would change to fit the relationship. Like in one relationship she was a swinger, in one relationship she was a housewife or something, I think.
Ultra conservative is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, she would change to fit the relationship, so she was never herself. And Kira grew up with these different marriages that were happening, and nothing ever lasting, and not having like a stable type of house life.
Weren't there like orgies going on at her house too? She was privy to.
There were.
Yeah.
Side note, that part of Kira's childhood, not specifically just the orgies, but how, for all I know, that could have been. Apparently, Kira's relationship with her mother is taken from Ed Brubaker's personal life.
Oh,
okay. Wow.
I'm not
digging deep.
Again, I'm not sure how specific in terms of like her stories and stuff. It might just be their tenuous relationship, but I did remember catching that in one of his afterwards on one of the issues.
Okay. Oh wow.
Oh, and a couple things I want to mention before we get into the third act where we were heading with the brothel house. 2 things. One is, like I was saying, he starts dating his ex-girlfriend that he runs in a coincidence. And the other thing that affects that is also, where was I going with this? Also, my brain just kind of shut down for a second. Fuck, I don't know. Okay, I'll go here instead. So he ends up dating her. He finds out that because he finds a bunch of his dad's artwork. His dad was an artist who drew a lot of really messed up drawings of like sexy demons and stuff of that nature.
Like nudity.
554? Yeah, 554.
Yeah.
And that's when he finds out that his dad also drew pictures of the demon. And he's like, wait a second, my dad's seeing this demon. I'm seeing this demon. I think he finds out that he had a half-brother who also saw a demon and shot himself. And then that's when it starts clicking that there's no demon. He has a mental illness.
Well, didn't his dad commit suicide too? Or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I think they keeps it pretty deliberate and balanced on whether it's mental illness, whether it's an actual demon. I do think in the bigger picture, the demon might be symbolic or like some sort of metaphor for mental illness.
That's what I feel like, especially when you think. I mean, there's a couple things that we'll talk about later when we get into the end that other hint, but it, to me, like at least in this part of the story, midway through, I felt that it was mental illness and him using something to rationalize what he's doing and wanted to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do that. I mean, I personally went through a bout of when I was in a very toxic relationship in a very bad place. Like you go through that thing where it's like you don't, if you have the wrong person in your life, you can start questioning reality itself because you just get your brain can get so meshed up and mashed up you don't know what's real, which is kind of what he's going through.
Mm-hmm.
He cares about this girl who's leading him on. I mean, he's already kind of messed up, but it doesn't help the situation.
And doesn't he find out too that like his meds were something he didn't think they were, and then once he quits taking them, yeah, and then he starts to feel better or something,
Yeah,
or he feels worse.
He was taking low doses of Valium instead of his antipsychotics or whatever he was supposed to be taking because Rex fucked up the order.
Yeah, so he's all over the place and is mentally like he's going through shit, and now he's killing people.
Yeah, I mean, and that also he ends up getting kind of cocky and ends up killing people in public places where he shouldn't be trying to kill people, which leads to him almost getting caught by the police a couple times.
I'm kind of okay with that. There's a really funny moment that I always laugh at because I've read this comic like almost 3 times now. He gets a cheap Halloween mask of Nixon to go to a Halloween party with Kira. And he's at, I think, a coffee shop they frequent or she works at or something. And one of the Russians goes there and he's like, hey, I'm looking for Kira's boyfriend, Dylan. I used to be his old roommate in college. And Dylan's standing right there. He's like, oh, really? And they go out to the car and Dylan just stabs him right in the neck. And in the inner dialogue, it says, so anyway.
And this
happens.
Is also kind of the fast forward. He ends up breaking up with his ex-girlfriend from the past he got back together with because she publishes his dad's artwork in an art museum, and he gets very upset. But it also leads to him start kind of coming to terms with what's going on and realizing he doesn't have to kill. Like he wants to stop killing for this demon because he believes the demon is not real. And then the Russians show up and he finds out that they're figuring out who he is. And they're coming. Yeah. And again, it kind of changes the whole killer beat kill, where it's not that you either kill the Russians or they're going to kill you instead of the demon going to kill you type of thing.
Mm-hmm. So. And I appreciate how it kind of like it shows how this weird guy just becomes a vigilante and how he gets lucky. And like I was saying earlier with the Russians, when he goes after them and tries to kill the main boss, I mean, he successfully does it. And his plan is that he goes in, he shoots, I think he shoots up a whorehouse.
Says where he's going to be.
And then he leaves. He says where he's going to be. He leaves a bag thinking they think it's his, and he says where he's going next. So they move all their enforcers away from the main boss's house to protect all those whorehouses. And then he's able to just simply walk in and kill them, which is great. I love that. I love how simple it was for him to do that.
That was cool. And he also starts, as we were kind of starting to say, he finally gets together with Kira. She breaks up with her dumbass boyfriend, and he finally accepts, like they accept that they care about each other, at least for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
So I did want to mention that.
It's a big journey for both of them to kind of admit that. And it's, I guess I can say, one of the few tragedies of the story, really, and just that they never can quite be on the same page at the same time.
Yeah. Because she cares about him, but she doesn't really, has a hard time connecting or committing in a way. Like, also, another thing that we hadn't mentioned yet is she changed her hair color a couple times throughout this comic, which is more symbolism, as Jesse was saying before we started recording, that she's kind of flipping through what's going on in her life. Something like that.
It seems like when she's at her most depressed is when she dyes her hair blue.
This book is full of symbolism. I mean, it's full of metaphor. I mean, trying to evoke different feelings out of you and not without. Yeah, there's lots of things in this book. It's worth reading. I will say that.
If I could say anything, because I mean, honestly, especially in today's political climate, like I'm kind of wary of vigilante stories. There's plenty of assholes out there with guns who think, like, oh, I'm going to do the right thing, or I'm going to correct some justice. I'm going to get back at those girls who wouldn't have sex with me. I'm going to get back at those people from that different group that I feel are ruining my country. This is See, the same era we're living in now, where they think, you know what, I'm gonna have Bruce Willis star in a remake of Death Wish and have him go after thugs and hoods, because again, that seems like a really appropriate time to have him doing that,
Willis, man, Bruce Willis.
But like with this story, I feel like it doesn't really take itself seriously in the way a lot of these stories tend to take themselves seriously. It's very much aware of the absurdity of what's going on and how it's going down. And the best part for me, honestly, is it, as much as all these stories could very easily fall into just being a straight up power trip or a power, what dang it, yes, it's straight up being a power fantasy where it's like, oh, I lost this bit of power and I need to reclaim it, or I never had this power and I finally something snapped and I finally have the courage, quote unquote, air quotes, whatever, to take it back, to take it. It kind of has a very sobering ending where it's like, at the end of the day, as much as I hate life, there's still precious bits to it that I take for granted and I couldn't have with doing all of this vigilante work and what it cost me.
Right. Which is why like parts of it can appeal to people as just entertainment. And like I was saying earlier, when he stabs the Russian and he says, so anyway, like stuff like that, it's pointing out how absurd it is. And it feels good to laugh because it's not taking itself seriously. So you feel okay to laugh with it, even though there are very, very dark elements to the book overall.
I'm about to get to one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to get to where after he kills the Russian boss, I forgot about this, but I'm flipping through the pages while we're talking. When it starts to go to Act 3, well, one thing I want to mention, so when he starts dating Kira, his roommate has the nerve to come up to him and say, hey, man, we got to set some ground rules. You can't bring her over here. Because she broke up with him. He doesn't want to see her around and see her being with him. And I like, and he's always been very docile. And then he gets, like, he's like, you know what? Screw you. You knew I liked her. You didn't care. You brought her over here. You screwed her. I had to listen to it. Well, screw you, man. Like, and I like that. I'm like, I mean, point. But
it's very much like that scene in Fight Club where he just like finally beats the shit out of himself in front of his boss. He's like, I've had enough of your bullshit.
Who are they going to believe? That I beat myself up or that you hit me?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a messed up movie.
So
it's a great moment. It's the type of honesty, and it didn't really have to involve him shooting him or hitting him or doing anything violent. Just by like, you know what? At the end of the day, you're just a fucking asshole. You deliberately you enjoy keeping me under your thumb. You may not be willing to admit it to yourself, but that's what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, doesn't he choke him, and then that's how he goes?
Solid. Yes.
Yeah.
There's some things that happen. Well, one that we kind of mentioned earlier, he doesn't find out until issue 14 after he killed the mob boss. He figured out the demon's not real. He stopped seeing, or he thinks the demon's not real. He stops seeing the demon. And Kira then tells him that his brother also was having hallucinations before he killed himself. And he describes the same thing that he saw, a demon with horns, or a shadow with horns like a demon. And then in the last page of this issue, Kira looks over and goes, What's wrong, Dylan? And her face is a demon's face on her body. And that's when he starts choking her out. And then I think he chokes Dylan or he attacks her or something of that nature.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't choke Kira out.
He chokes the roommate.
Yeah, the roommate, because he's getting ready to confess to Kira about his vigilante stuff.
Oh, okay.
The demon starts antagonizing him. And then he's like, oh, by the way, your roommate's listening through the door. And he's like, the fuck? And he opens his door. He's like, you've been listening to us? And he's like, I thought I heard my name mentioned. And then like eventually like he goes back and forth between arguing with his roommate and arguing with the demon. And then he attacks the demon, and it turns out the demon's the roommate. And Kira has to knock him out before he kills his roommate.
With a lamp.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. I really should have read this again. And then he ends up going to a mental asylum.
Yeah.
I mean, they still don't even know that he's a vigilante. No one knows that yet.
Well, he confesses and nobody believes him.
Well, there's a reason they don't believe him, but I thought that was funny. Sitting there, and they're sitting in a group like, anybody, you want to tell anything? I'm the vigilante. And they're like, no, you're not. And he's like, what? Why don't they believe me? And he starts saying things. They're like, vigilante just killed 3 people, and you're in here.
Oh,
So-
yeah. He has a copycat.
I was thinking for a second, wait a second, was he hallucinating this whole time? And it was really somebody else at first? And then it starts to kind of go into where this vigilante is killing not like organized crime, but just regular drug dealers and whoever. Like he doesn't have the same type of
Smarts.
well, not smarts. I'm trying to like virtues in quotations, which you can't see me doing on this audio show, that he thinks that he's above because he's targeting the brain of the operation, not just idiots on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it's more or less fighting the symptoms versus fighting the cause.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that was a really great element to the story, because honestly, the copycat is what the de facto, I feel like, vigilante in a vigilante story is. And it's kind of like, no, here's what makes me different from the ones you usually see in these type of tales. I don't just kill, the random people who are caught up in the system. I go after this, these people, and they come from, similar yet very different backgrounds. Like they're both from the suburbs. They both had, an upbringing from a rather well-to-do family. The big difference being, of course, he was popular in school and military trained and everything else.
That's right. I totally forgot about all of that. You're right.
Which kind of fits with
the last 8 issues in one day.
Yeah.
It also kind of fits that whole idea of what happens in real life, where you do have people who are military trained and sometimes end up doing bad things. Well, there's been a few serial killers throughout history have been military trained. Like the one, I wish I could remember the guy's name, but he was a sniper in a tower who had a mental illness, who kept shooting people in the tower until someone went up and shot him. This is back in like the 60s or something, I think.
Yeah, I remember.
But I do know that's one of the earlier cases of mental illness being like something wrong. Because after he died, he said, "Please examine my brain after you stop me." He wrote something like that when he was up in this tower, and then when they killed him, they examined his brain and saw something was different.
No empathy.
Yeah, that's what. Okay, I wish I could remember this guy is the name of this, just so I could be more accurate with the actual true crime story. But I can't remember.
It's a part of the conditioning, especially for snipers. I think like that one dude they did a movie about with Bradley Cooper. I think the real person was called Chris Kyle.
American Sniper.
Like they make him look like a hero in the movie, but like it turns out he was kind of a psychopath.
I think that's unfortunately what you have to be in order. Even though you're doing something for, let's say, a noble cause, when you're doing it for, you're doing it for a cause, let's just say, but I think you have to be able to justify to yourself what you're doing. I think you have to be a certain kind of person.
He made it into a game though. Like I heard if I remember right, he kept tally, which again I think is a normal
They all
thing.
do.
Yeah.
Even like aircraft, it's a military thing, I think.
They even keep tally in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, in that case, they're killing things that to them are monsters, in quotations again. But they also eat them. So if someone's eating my friend, I think I'm gonna have a little less respect for him. So
yeah,
I want to put my friend in a pot.
Basically, what we're saying is there are people who put pineapple on their pizza and people who can't. That's all we're saying.
Except this pineapple has eyes and legs and noses and ears. But,
I like pineapple on pizza. I know there's something wrong with me.
No,
unless I'm with you on that one.
Okay, we all got the right people here. See, all the other
unless
people
your pineapple has nose and eyes and ears and a little leaf popping out of his head and looking at you like hi, and whistles and comes to you when you whistle, it's okay to eat that pineapple.
This is a really weird fucking juxtaposition of a conversation.
I know. I made a Pikmin reference because I just recorded Pikmin, so.
Oh.
That's where I was going with that.
So okay. I just looking for something to eat right now. So anyway,
I'll take it. Back to Kill or Be Killed. So when he's in the insane asylum or mental hospital, and he finds out that the vigilante's out there killing, there's a scene where his stupid roommate goes into his room, finds the shotgun, finds the mask, and ends up calling the police on him. The police again don't care because they just shortly after that they kill the vigilante that was running around that killed the cop, the copycat. Sorry, yes. So they don't care.
Yeah, so the whole time Dylan's doing his thing, he's being the vigilante with the Russians and all that. Let's go back to Lily Sharp. She's a small town cop who gets promoted to detective, and she comes in and she's the one who's following all this murders, and she's with these other two cops. Like Jesse said, it's very Boondock Saints because they're like, obviously it was this, and she's like, no, you dumbasses, like you don't know what you're talking about. And they don't want to believe her because they think she's looking to be famous. Like they think she's just trying to be a famous detective, and she's a girl first off, so they're just like, shut up, just let us do our job, you're only here to look pretty. And at the end of the day, she's the one who's actually really putting it together. And she even goes to Dylan, after Dylan's roommate turns over the evidence, she even goes to Dylan's mom's house where he got the gun for his first kill. And she really starts putting it together there. And that's why she eventually goes to visit him in the mental asylum, which happens a little later because Dylan's there for quite a while. And he's still can't like let go of what he's going through being a vigilante. Like one of the this really reminds me of Terminator 2 with Sarah Connor, but one of the guards is groping a mental patient and Dylan catches it and he's like, yeah, now I gotta kill this fucker. And his plan is to because they have like little recess times where they go out to the snow. And he's like, I'm going to push him out into the thin ice and hopefully he'll drown. And one of the funny quotes he says, which I wrote down, was, it's super easy to shadow someone when everyone thinks you're drugged out of your mind.
Which is also just the whole idea. If you look like you belong somewhere and don't act suspicious, people aren't going to notice you. Like what I used to do personally, like I didn't want, if I go to a store, I didn't want people to bother me. I just put headphones in. There'd be no music playing. There'd be nothing playing in the headphones. But I'd put earbuds in and just walk around like I wasn't paying attention to anybody. And people talk to me like, "Hey, how can I help you?" I just ignore them and keep walking. I couldn't hear them. I could hear them the whole time. It just was my way of looking like I wasn't listening when I actually was listening to everything going on around me. I just wanted to look oblivious.
But what you're really doing is you're whistling Amazing Grace, right?
Sure. I was more paying attention to what was going on. But
what I will say is, it is amazing the shit people will talk about you when you think you can't hear them as well. Been plenty of times had my earbuds in, music was super low, but I could hear people saying stuff, and I'm just like, oh, that's very interesting, good to know. And they're like, oh, it was like, yeah, I could hear everything you were saying. Thank you.
But he does finally kill that stupid orderly too. I mean, the leg thing fails, but he pushes him down the stairs.
Yeah,
and then stomps on his head.
The thing about stairs is they don't really kill you as easily as they make it look in the movies. Rarely do you actually snap your neck, stomps on his neck, and breaks it.
It's so great.
Messed up comic. I was like, what the hell are you having me read, Stefan?
Yeah.
The orderly did make it easy.
He deserved it.
Before we get to the last little bit of this, because we're pretty much near the end, I actually do have a funny story about how I came across this comic since Mike brought it up.
Sure.
I had originally wanted to buy this in a comic shop. And at the time, I was like super broke. I was like, whatever, I'll get it later in trade paperback. And I went to my record store, and they have a little comic section where whatever comics they get, they'll just put out for $1. And literally, I want to say issues 4 through 16 were there for $1. And I was like, oh my God, I had store credit. I just grabbed all of them. And turns out I was 5 minutes late because 5 minutes before that, some guy came in and got issues 1 through 5. And or 1 through 4 or whatever. And I was like, you son of a bitch. Yeah. So I ended up having to buy all those later. And they were like $5 each to the comic shop, but it was totally worth it. But I got really lucky with this comic because it came to me cheap when every issue is usually like $3.99, I think. So yeah. I got lucky.
That's a cool story, though. Like, I mean, also how it came to you in a weird fashion, like not in a way that you would expect it.
Right. And even one of them was a variant cover. And, I remember the guy was like, I'm going to keep, like, he came back later when I was still like looking for all of them. So I actually had to kind of race through the comics to like grab them before he did. And he's like, I already got issues 1 through 4, man. I'm going to get the rest. I'm like, no, you're not.
That's kind of a jerk move. Like, okay, I used to collect comics, and I used to go to like half price books, and I'd go through the bins and looking for stuff, and but I would never like. I would see people who had stuff that I may be interested, or I had stuff, but we didn't talk to each other. We didn't go, "Hey, man, I already got those, so I deserve those." Like, you didn't grab them, you didn't grab them. Like, that's just stupid.
Yeah. And he was like I mean, this is no slight against Eminem, but he was like some Eminem looking dude. And I was just like, no, dude, you don't deserve this comic. I do.
I've had instances, like I used to have a buddy of mine that I would hang out with, and we go comic shopping. Like he had made it to try to get the stuff that I wanted before me. Yeah, we stopped doing that when that crap started. I was like, okay, we're done. Because we would just collect first appearances and key issues. So if he found one before I did, he could already own the book. He would buy it again just because he made it a competition. I'm like, that's not how this works.
What did this?
Yeah, we stopped hanging out. I mean, I still talk to him, but it was just I wasn't in the best place mentally either at that time. Like right before that, so I was taking more, just kind of like okay, but yeah, no, I got tired of that and I stopped comic hunting with him because I didn't like that.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of mentally too, I mean, I don't know if anyone cares to hear this, but when I was 18, I actually had a bad split with my dad where I like didn't want to live with him, but my mom had gotten on drugs. And so I kind of had to go live with him. And it was a very depressing time because my dad's kind of a selfish person. And when I turned 18, the week I turned 18, I had left his house after we gotten into an argument. And I went to go live with my grandma, who kind of lived in the semi-ghetto. And it was weird being there because she would go to work at night, and my uncle, who has lived with her for like 20 years because he's a drug addict, he would smoke meth. So then I would just be sitting there smelling it all night in my room, playing on my GameCube. And after a while, it started to like beat me down. And at that time, I was able to get free health insurance through Access, which here in Arizona, which is what it's called. And I was taking like 4 Klonopin a day just to like adjust and like be normal. And my body was like falling to pieces because like I know some people need medication to like function, and I understand that, but like me, I don't like taking pills and I don't like any of that stuff. But at that time I was taking like so many drugs that like when I read this and I read how like doped up he is, I'm like, man, that was me at one point. And like I know that feeling of feeling like invisible, because you're just so doped up. And
yeah,
people are
you're not able to handle the world around you, and everything is just I mean, and that also kind of touches on the whole subject of this book of a character who just can't handle life and ends up doing something very extreme to deal with it. Just life gets hard. I mean, things happen. I mean, I went through some dark places in my life, but and when you come out of it, you come out stronger, come out better in most cases.
That's exactly right.
So I mean, it makes you grow. I mean, the same thing. Like, the book, the character grows. I mean, he doesn't grow in the best places, but it's the same idea. Like, well, in real life, people usually grow, and we learn to deal with it and adapt, and it becomes a part of us.
Exactly, and they still haven't caught me for all those vigilante murders. So.
Well, the only thing I can see you doing is collect comic books.
Yeah. Oh man, comic books saved my life, people.
Hey,
but anyway.
Yes. Jesse, do you want to take us into the third arc? Because me and Stefan have talked enough, and we didn't get anywhere. So why don't you help us?
Where did we leave off? I think Detective Sharp is visiting him in the mental institution.
Yes, when she visits the mental institution, all that last 2 issues, essentially.
Yeah. So Lily visits Dylan and basically lays out that she's figured out his entire game, and he has an opportunity to walk away still because he knows at the end of the day she doesn't have enough evidence to stick, and he knows that the task force that she was a part of has closed the case. They don't really want to open this can of worms because they've already been humiliated through this whole debacle of trying to catch him in the first place. So they just really want that win. And he basically, like, she strikes a nerve when she brings up Rex, and he kind of just starts spilling his guts on that and how bad he feels about it. And then the power goes out, and it turns out the Russians, they foreshadow, they already like set this up before she even enters the building, but the Russians are on their way, and their plan is to basically ambush the building, find Dylan, and kill him.
One thing we didn't completely mention, he accidentally killed Rex, his drug dealer, early on when he's fighting a Russian, which you didn't completely say. So
yeah,
I think we skipped that. Pretty sure.
Which also leads Lily Sharp to believe that there were two different vigilantes instead of one, because the second vigilante, the copycat one, just mindlessly killing, whereas Dylan, when Rex was shot, he tried to drop him off at the hospital, which seemed out of character. So that's another reason what leads her to him.
And the cops try writing it off as like it's just a smoke screen. She's like, but he was clearly asking for help for this person. It's a smoke screen, Sharp.
Yeah, I do like it when as you read through that the mafia's just going through the hospital, just taking everybody out, and then him and Lily work together, and he has a gun, and they're taking out the mafia. That was pretty damn. Like how she's like, you don't get a gun. He's like, I got more experience than you do. Like, I'll do it.
Like, have you shot anybody yet? No. And then, of course, she gets her opportunity to shoot someone 5 minutes later. And she shook. Yeah.
She was the guy with a fire extinguisher. I forgot about that.
Yeah. I mean, you work with what you have. But anyway, So he ends up killing someone, and he ends up shooting someone else and getting a gun for Lily, and then she ends up shooting somebody and saving him. And they find a key card on his therapist who got shot, and they end up escaping out of the hospital, and they're in the parking lot, and he's like, I forgot that they'd have one Russian waiting in the parking lot. And the dude goes to shoot, and he throws his body across Lily and ends up taking a bullet for her. And then I think he's the one who finishes the Russian. Yeah. He ends up killing the Russian, and then he succumbs to his wounds in the parking lot.
Well, in the end of issue 19, it says, and that is where I died. I'm like, what? But there's still one more issue. And that's where the issue ends. And then the final issue, it shows her calling for help. She's trying to get help, and then it shows him waking up in a hospital room. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then the whole last issue shows him and Kira get back together because they haven't been seeing each other too much because he's been in the mental hospital. And then he's working for Lily, and he takes down a crooked cop, and him and Kira get an apartment together.
Yeah, and Matt convinces Lily that what he does is okay, even though she was never really sold on it in the first place.
There's an image here where he looks like a Ninja Turtle for some reason.
Yeah, he basically, it turns into the ending of Boondock Saints, where essentially, like, yeah, the police condone what I do now, and as long as I keep changing my uniform, everything is great. And you can already sense that this is not the actual ending, because it's just there's too many logistical holes here that the story would not forgive itself. Slide.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out he's like, no, I just died. That's what would have happened. I'm like, what? And then it ends with Kira talking to her psychologist, and she has the blue hair again, and I think she's talking to Lily. Yeah, talking to Lily, and it's just, and it shows her getting hit on by a bunch of idiots, because what happens to women, unfortunately, what they go through. And then in the very last scene, the demon is right behind her, and that it makes you wonder. Yes.
Yeah, it just leaves it a little ambiguous, is what it's saying.
You can see it festering and growing in the way she's talking about things, because at first she's just lamenting for Dylan, and she has a lot of sympathy for him, and she's like, I just wish he would have opened up to me and talked to me. I could have helped him. And then she starts going into the state of the world, and then she's like, this world took, he was already a broken person to begin with, but this world took what was left and ground it in the sand, and then all of a sudden you start to recognize the train of thought she's going on, and that's when demon comes into play.
Yeah.
It's messed up. I mean, it hit me. I'm like, oh. But it's just one fucked up comic. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I think that Ed Brubaker, I mean, I started reading his work in Daredevil, and one of the things, you know, like people always say it's hard to get into comics, and I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not that hard. And one of the reasons is because that when a writer gets on a book, like let's say Brian Michael Bendis was on Daredevil, I think it was him before Brubaker, but he wrote a story, it ends, and then another writer comes on and starts up another story. But in Brubaker's case, he said, no, I'm just going to continue the story that Bendis was doing. So he just kept writing it. And it was a great story. And that was my actual first encounter with Ed Brubaker's work. And ever since then, everything I've read by him has been phenomenal. I mean, he's just an amazing writer. He's very stuck in noir. Like that's the thing he loves the most. So if you like go to Image Comics and you check out his work, you're just going to find a lot of newer stuff. But you'll always have Sean Phillips' art, which is great. I think you guys liked it, right?
I did.
Oh, I loved it, and like I said earlier, it's very fitting to the noir style. It kind of reminds me of the comic art from Max Payne a bit, actually.
Huh, that's a good comparison.
Oh yeah.
Also reminds me of Max Payne too in a little ways. Now that you talk about it, but Max Payne a little more justified in my opinion. But
if Max Payne was a little more positive about life, I'd say.
I really want to go back and play Max Payne again. Oh, in my head, I do. I don't think I really want to. But...
They both took painkillers too, which is funny.
Oh man, Max Payne 1 is super fucking hard though, if I remember correctly. All right, enough about Max Payne. But, no, I mean, I enjoyed it. Like, it hit me in a few parts, and it made me remember things about my own personal life. And as we were kind of touching on this, and I thought that was another powerful idea of the book, that it did kind of connect with me, at least in the sense of if it's someone being very troubled, and, you know, he's 28 years old, and you're at that time in your life where, you know, you're no longer a child, you're an adult, but you're getting near your 30s, and you can look at your life and go, where am I? Like, what am I doing with my life? And I think that's also kind of an interesting take on this character, too, that he's just, you know, you're at that point in your life when you're very confused sometimes, at least for some people are.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's all right.
I was going to say, he's at that point, essentially, you know, your early 30s or your late 20s, early 30s, where you're just now settling into being an adult. And you realize it finally fully, completely sinks in. I'm an adult and I still have no fucking clue what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I can say personally, like when I was 27, I mean, my life was not good at that point. Like I was in a very dark place. And like, I understand, you know, if I connected in some place, I didn't go on any killing sprees or anything. I just bought comics. But I understand. Like I thought that was interesting. I think a lot of people could probably relate with this character, at least in that, besides not the killing part, but just the fact that you have someone who is down on their luck, who feels like, you know, the girl that you want is with someone else. That's an asshole. Like they shouldn't be with them, but they are. And it's that whole idea of everything not, you know, like you don't have the job you should have, or you don't have the life that you feel you deserve. And, you know, at that point where you're still learning and moving on. Like I thought that was very interesting. And kind of connected.
Yeah. And the overworld thoughts of it too, like I mentioned in the beginning, like how corrupt society has become and how it feels like the bad guys always get away with it, you know, and the good guys are always never getting nothing out of it. And, you know, our whole system's just like falling down, like healthcare is not good for anyone. And, you know, everyone just seems like they're on the edge of life, you know, like they're living paycheck to paycheck and, you know, they can never get ahead. Nothing ever gets better, it just gets worse. And it does a lot of that. Like, that's why I wanted to read the monologue in the beginning there, because it's just, he just nails it so much in so many ways that, you know, a lot of politicians today, they are greedy and, you know, they are corrupt and we are destroying the planet, you know, and just everything he says, I completely agree with. But then again, some of it, I mean, obviously the killing, it's very counterculture. Like, oh, I'm going to make a difference by taking out these people, like Jesse was saying earlier.
So was the Joker. That's what Joker thinks, yeah.
Yeah, like chaos rules, and, you know, you can't have that. But everything else he said, like, I kind of get it, you know? So, I don't know. Should we go to Booker, or Shuffle Box? Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
I'll go first. This is going on the shelf. Will I ever read it again? Probably not. No, but it's something that I will definitely be recommending to people. Like, even if you listen to this episode, and yes, we spoil the ending, we spoil the story, you could still read it, still enjoy it, still gonna see things, see the art that we can't only can describe you so well. So definitely read it. I will definitely be telling people about this. I'll be trying to recommend to people that don't like superhero stories, that don't want to read about, Batman or the Joker and want something more, I would say realistic, but not really that realistic. Something more something with a more normal character that doesn't have powers. That isn't the Punisher. And so I'm gonna go on the shelf. I'll be in something that I'm glad to say that I read. Jesse, how about you?
Definitely a shelf. I'm gonna have to see if I can track down like an omnibus or whatever that has like everything all together in one book.
Oh, it's definitely there should be. I know collect edition so far it's just four. It's in 4 issues or 4 collections.
All right. Okay.
I don't know if it's an omnibus not yet.
Yeah. But
sorry, I haven't pulled up while we're talking. But
it's all good. And also, I will say on the nature of spoilers, there's huge swaths of this story we haven't even really touched on. It's better to just kind of experience it. And at the same time, I'm really glad that the story is all out and complete, because as much as I really enjoyed it, I think I'd also probably have a hard time going issue by issue, week to week. Like, it's one of those things where it's better just to read everything. Like, at the pace of the novel.
I read the whole thing in a couple of days. I couldn't stop reading it. I mean, it's something that, like you said, it's meant to be read in a more sit down time, not waiting months over the course of 2 years or anything.
Yeah, and I had to. It took me a while to get through, just because, especially with my own medical conditions and life. Like, it's the type of story that kind of demands that you pay attention, and sometimes you're so broke you can't even pay that. So,
well, it's a tough read at time. Just everything is happening to this character, and if you're not, depending on how your life is, it can hit you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it definitely resonated with me. I mean, I've been institutionalized before. I've been drugged before. I definitely have my own mental issues.
But at least you haven't killed anybody before, so we're okay.
No, but you guys are aware of. But anyway,
sorry, I throw that in there.
But no, like, as speaking as someone who's dealt with some of the shit that Dylan's done with Demon notwithstanding and homicide and all that.
That's good.
Yeah, like, I don't think there's anything that will be exceptionally triggering that you have to worry about, again, just because of the fact the story doesn't really take itself serious enough for it to really warrant that. But I don't know. I have to recommend it just on the principle alone of it's one of the first Vigilante stories I've read in a long time where it felt, like it actually has a justified place in existing, and it's not just the same thing rehashed and something that I could see some angry white boy misinterpreting and being, like the Joker, being co-opted and everything.
Like the people who think the Joker is right, yeah, like those people.
Yeah. It's just it's a great world to immerse yourself in, which I know sounds weird, especially at us talking how fucked up this story is. But it's
fiction.
It's fiction. It's a good thing. It'll make you think. It'll really make you think about the state of things. And I wish it provided some guidance towards what an answer to all the problems would be. It doesn't, but I guess that's kind of our responsibility at this point.
Yes.
Oh, Stefan, how about you?
It's pretty obvious it's going on my shelf.
Yeah,
I promise one of these days I'm going to pick something that I don't know anything about when we do comics. I'm just going to go in blind, and we're going to see how we... Yeah. I'm pretty sure Mike's going to pick some weird shit.
Oh, yeah.
And, it just... When I got this, like I said earlier, I got it at the right time. I got it in a good way. And I went and bought a bottle of whiskey and mixed it with some Coke and sat on my patio and read through the whole thing in one night because I just couldn't
Damn.
stop.
Impressive.
And I knew I was gonna love it. And by the end of it, I was obviously really drunk, but I also was like, this is amazing. Like, this is one of my favorite comics of all time. And when Mike asked, what's the next thing you want to do on the show, I was like,
well,
gee, I don't know.
I had recommendations, and he's like, no, I don't like those recommendations. We're going to do this instead.
And I was like, fuck that. No, I'm just kidding.
Mike was like, more Batman. Batman.
Yeah. I'm trying to do like not obvious things and also like things that aren't just Batman and freaking, Spider-Man or something.
But I do.
Yeah.
You don't seem interested in the man that talks to fish. I like Aquaman a lot, by the way.
I will read some Aquaman, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna like it.
I don't know what he's saying.
Yeah, maybe you guys really do hate your co-host.
that was good. We do torture each other.
Sometimes. We do. It's fun. I'm not having fun unless Mike's not having any fun at all.
Right,
but no. Yeah,
I derailed it.
But no, I love this comic, and like I said, I love Ed Brubaker. Sean Phillips has quickly become one of my favorite artists of all time. I think people forget that comic books, there can be a writer, but half the story is being told by the art. And Sean Phillips knows exactly what he's doing. He's super professional. I think he's British, but he's got it, and I appreciate his art a lot. And yeah, it's going on my shelf.
Okay, that's about what I expected for all of us to say. So completely. What?
Completely.
I'm trying to think of anything else I want to say. Any last things you want to say about this book? Should we start wrapping it up?
Yeah, let's wrap it.
All right. Well, first I want to thank Jesse for coming on board for us, because I did not want to do another 2-man comic episode. So thank you for having us do that.
Oh my God. Okay, wait. I have one more thing I want to say. Yes. Before I had picked Killer, this is a little behind the scenes. Before I had picked Killer Be Killed, I was gonna pick a Child's Play comic book because I knew Jesse is coming on. We're both into horror, and I just thought it'd be funny.
Hate me that much?
I knew Mike would hate it.
Mike would hate it.
And I don't remember which issue it is, but it's literally, I read the first issue of some Child's Play comic book, and it's literally him being made together, and then he hangs out with a hippie for like 20 pages. And I was like, no, we're not reading this. So I'm sorry. You guys didn't get that. Yeah. It is so bizarre. But please go read Killer Be Killed. Instead.
Yeah, don't look at the other thing he's talking about. My God. All right. So I want to thank everyone for listening. I mean, this is you can find, we don't do comic episodes but once a month we do some. So if you like this one, there's definitely some more episodes you listen to, or many different episodes at this point for you to listen to. We keep publishing more stuff every week. Just keep publishing more. So please recommend us to your friends. Recommend us to anyone. Hell, tell the world that you enjoy listening to the show, and get some more people. And also leave us 5-star reviews on iTunes. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And our awesome intro and outro music came from Bulby, aka Mike Stoney, from his EP Bite the Bullet. It's a Cool Kid Squad. There'll be a link in the show notes for his YouTube channel. So I want to thank everyone for listening, and we will come back to you with another comic episode next month, because we're having fun doing it. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.